I'm here at Internet of Things World 2017 with Arlette Hart, Chief Information Security Officer of the FBI. Arlette, could you tell us a little bit about your organisation, the role you play within it, and what that role involves?
So the FBI is the premier law enforcement agency in the world. We have a scope that is basically defend the American people and uphold the Constitution of the United States. We do both criminal and intelligence activities, and we do a wide range of both. And my role in it is to defend the FBI itself. We do the cybersecurity for the FBI and ensure that we have the right protections in place so that our systems are protected and that we are defending the data that's been entrusted to us.
And the Internet of Things, is it more of an opportunity or a challenge as far as your role involves?
I would say yes, absolutely. It's both an opportunity and a challenge. We use the Internet of Things, of course, because there's a lot of information and capabilities that are relevant to doing a better job of protecting the American people. A lot of the body cameras and the capabilities, the virtual environments and things like that that help us train and help us understand what's going on in circumstances from the end user perspective. And then at the same time, we're very aware that our adversaries are also using the Internet of Things and looking for ways to leverage the Internet of Things as attack vectors. So, you know, the recent DNS compromise that used IoT devices as the vector for actually doing the DNS attack. Those are IoT issues that we need to look at and say, okay, yes, they're both pros and cons. You know, every technology is both the friend and the foe. It is not a value proposition with the technology, it's a capability proposition. So we are very conscious of that, and so we look at them both as the opportunity and the possible threat vector.
Obviously, the rise of the Internet of Things has given way to a whole host of new digital vulnerabilities. Which do you think is in particular most problematic, and how can we counter it?
I think the biggest challenge with the Internet of Things in general is kind of the same as it is with IT in general, as in it grew up without security being a first consideration. It gets built in afterwards, and they try and bolt security on afterwards, and that's where the vulnerabilities come from. The inability to update devices, the inability to secure devices after they're put in. And the ones that are in place now, they can't really recover from that well, so then you end up with how do you really contain the vulnerabilities. And that's a real challenge because they're not meant to be contained. They're supposed to be, you know, lots of free, open communications. Looking at that and finding the targeted updates is important, and looking at ways that you can really focus your remediation efforts so that you limit what the damage can be. And taking devices and making them less mission critical is also important when the devices themselves are vulnerable.
There's also many other futuristic technologies relevant to the Internet of Things here today. Is there any one in particular that you think is particularly fundamental to the future of the FBI?
So you have, let's see, what was it, blockchain and the connected cars, and you have the smart cities and the connected devices. They're all both fundamental to the future of the FBI and also ways that other people can do damage to each other. So we need to be careful about that. I would say they're so interactive and the one depends on the other. Obviously you put your priorities in different places and say, okay, that one's most important. I mean, I love blockchain because it really helps validate current data and things like that and make sure that you have real good audit trails. I think that would be a terrific thing. I think the connected cars is a terrific thing, and then looking at how you can manage those going into the future but one of the dangers is you're looking at data and how data is moving, because the Internet of Things is really all about big data moving to different places. So making sure that the right protections are in place, not just from government, but also from the private sector. You know, private sector having all this information about groups of individuals and individuals specifically identifiable can be a real challenge and a real danger, and the question of what privacy means in that context is also very important, and it's important to the FBI to look at that also.
You're speaking tomorrow on how the role Internet of Things can play in communities, cities, and environments. What main points will you cover, and what recommendations will you make to your audience?
The biggest point that I'd really like to get across is that there's an unevenness in application for the Internet of Things. You get into a major city that has a very forward-leaning technological infrastructure, they can do a lot of things that a smaller city in the middle of someplace that really can't spell IT can't do. A lot of smaller cities have trouble attracting talent to their environment in general, and how they can get to the place where they are really driving Internet of Things capabilities is a lot of policy and question of how are you going to pay for it and what's it mean to do it. It can be done, but there's a lot of questions and a lot of complications that revolve around it. Not the least being a skills gap, and that's a significant problem in a small town.
Speaking of skill gaps, how do you think we can tackle the skill gap for IT and IoT, particularly where the public sector is concerned?
I think that's an uphill battle. I think obviously there's retraining initiatives, and there's identifying potential people, and there's debt forgiveness kind of things that can happen that would help a lot. So if people go into the public sector, they can say, so okay, I'm working for government, so my student loans are being forgiven because I'm doing this. We're here in Silicon Valley where they don't have to have their student loans forgiven. They can just make enough money to pay them. But in a lot of places that might not be the case. And I think there's probably an unevenness in skills too. It's a question of really kind of attracting people to where the skills are needed. I think there's a glut of skills in some places and a real dearth in other places, and trying to fix that question, attracting people to the public sector, to the smaller and less well-served communities. Those are pieces that are really challenging. But there's reasons to do both. Public sector, there's a real do something good for society component to that. That really, that's one of the reasons that I'm in the public sector, is because I get to do something that's important. And I think some people are motivated by that, and I think that's one of the ways, if we can get those words out, that we can really make that difference.
Thank you, Arlette.
Thank you so much.